Hi, my name is Jonathan Kane, and as I mentioned in one of my prior videos, one of the things I wanted to try to do as a marriage and family therapist was to provide a place for clients and just the public in general to get some resources to help in their relationships, either as a couple or any relationship. A lot of the things that I'll talk about can be helpful in any and all relationships. One of the things that I talk about with couples usually as soon as we meet is something called the 4 A's. It's something that we can implement relatively quickly to try to get things going in a positive direction in a relationship. Now, before I begin, one thing I did want to mention was I want people to know that I'm posting this on YouTube so that way they can have the opportunity to not only watch the videos, but to be able to ask questions. So that way, in future uh, recordings, what I might do is post something that's informative, but also at the same time answer questions that people have been posting on the YouTube videos. Now, as I go into the 4 A's, I'm going to tell you a little story first. I do have a little paper that I've written that I might also attach to the description or somewhere in the YouTube video, so that way if you want to get something on paper, you can have this in written form. The one way I usually start this when I talk to couples is I tell them just a little quick brief story about me growing up in New York with my father. My father was a steel fabricator, made a lot of custom steel products for people doing construction. And in his business, one of the things they had was a threading machine. So they would take rods of steel, cut them to certain lengths, thread them, then sometimes weld them, or whatever the case may be. There were some machines that were very small, some were very big, and I don't know, I was 7 or 8 years old. I can't believe that they let me just walk around with all this heavy equipment and things like that. That was probably before, I mean, I'm guessing OSHA existed, but people really didn't care too much, not like they do today. I would have never been allowed in that environment as a 7 or 8 year old kid. Nevertheless, I was totally amazed by these machines, the way that they could just cut the threads and the smells that it had, and I was just amazed by it. But one day I asked, because where the metal would go into the die that would cut the threads, it would create, well, what they would do is they would have these spigots of oil pouring onto these threads. And as a kid, I thought oil was messy. It was sticky and slippery. It was hard to get out of your clothes. It was just a mess. You wanted to avoid it. So I asked my dad, why do you do that? And he actually said to me, well, first of all, pick up one of those rods that just came out of the machine. And I picked it up, and it was really warm to touch. And he was like, do you feel that heat? And I said, yes. And he said, well, if we didn't have oil pouring on there as a lubricant, it would create so much friction that it would just seize up and it would break the machine. I probably didn't know what seize meant, but I knew what broke meant. And so it would break. And so I was like, okay, I still probably didn't fully understand, but I got the message that the oil is good or the machine would break. That was kind of the takeaway. So anyway, so as couples or in any relationship, these 4 A's are something that can help you from whenever you run into conflict, right? When you're going to have, because we're all going to have conflict, and that conflict is going to create friction. That friction is going to create heat, and our emotions can easily get the best of us. And what I find is that if we pour these 4 A's all over our relationship like oil and just soak and immerse ourselves in this, that when conflict arises, you don't have nearly the amount of heat buildup and tension in your relationship that you would have otherwise if you don't have these things. So I'm going to read some of these. First, I'm just going to quickly go over the 4 A's just in general. The first one is appreciation. The second one is affirmation. The third one is affection. And the last one is apology. So let's go over these in a little more detail. So first, appreciation. And I'm just going to read the definition of appreciation for you from my paper. And that is defined as the recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something. And what I find that over time, we start to take people for granted, whether it be our spouses or any significant other. We just start to make assumptions, and we just start to not really enjoy the good qualities that they bring to us. So it's a really good idea to, on a daily basis, make note of all the ways these significant people, especially your spouse, brings enjoyment and fulfillment to your life. and comment on it. Use words and show that appreciation for everything they do, even if it's something small. Um, my wife, I take out the trash generally. My wife is constantly reminding me and just saying, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing that. Things I should be doing, not anything extra special. Things I do with the kids, things I do around the house. And I also do that for her. The things she does every day, I don't take those for granted, and we just say thank you. I really appreciate it. Or I comment on how good something is. Even though maybe it's a meal she's made for me 1,000 times, I'll still say how delicious it is and how much I appreciate it. So that's appreciation. Next would be affirmation. And it sounds a lot alike, but let me read the definition. It is a little different. Affirmation is defined as the action or process of emotional support or encouragement. So this is more emotional support. So it might not be something you would do or they would do. For example, I'm a cyclist, and my wife would never ride the distances that I ride my bike. At the same time, and she doesn't even understand why. When sometimes we go for bike rides, and I'm like, "Wow, did you like that climb?" And she's like, "Absolutely not," because it hurts. Where I tend to find that challenge and the pain kind of exhilarating. She does not. That's why we ride mostly on the flat. We try to ride flat trails when I ride with my wife. But she, when I go for a long bike ride, she'll be like, "Hey, I hope you have a great ride," and she'll positively comment on it when I'm done. Like she'll say positive things about, "Wow, that," when I show her where I went, or talk about the mileage. While she can't really understand or comprehend how that's interesting to me, or how I find enjoyment on it, she's still very supportive. And that's how you want to be with your spouses or significant other people in your life. Is even if you don't understand something that they do, but you can see they take great enjoyment in it, you want to encourage them and support them in that. Also, we want to things that we are interested in. Say your significant other has an important job meeting or a job interview, or your kids, something that's very meaningful to them. We want to constantly be emotionally supportive and encouraging to them in those endeavors. So that's affirmation. The third one is affection. So affection is defined as a gentle feeling of fondness or liking. Okay? Again, I think that when we're not showing appreciation or affirmation, one thing that starts to dwindle out of relationships is affection. We start to not say I love you as much. We don't give those hugs. We don't give those kisses. We don't have those gentle touches, or when we're sitting by each other, we don't hold hands anymore. When we're driving, we don't do the little things for each other that creates that feeling of fondness and liking that you have towards one another. And this isn't just for spouses. I do it with my kids. I try to make sure every day I give my kids a hug and a kiss in some way. As my kids get older, they don't like kisses and they don't like hugs, but I usually try to figure out some way to show affection, telling them I love them and I care about them, making sure I always tell them that on a daily basis. Also, just to remember, with couples, one thing I've noticed is that at some point some of these things become kind of rote. It's like, okay, love you, dear, bye, quick kiss out the door. That's not, I mean, while it's not bad, it's not enough, in my opinion. What you want to do is give a full embrace and a real kiss and say, I love you. I look forward to seeing you later. Making comments about how each one looks. Wow, I like that dress, or I like you. Wow, is that a new color lipstick, or did you paint your nails, or I love your hair. And then again, giving little, like when I walk by my wife in the kitchen, I'm usually will touch her shoulder or maybe grab her around the waist. Just real gentle, just to know I'm there and to make that physical connection. So it's verbal and physical. And it doesn't always have to mean sex. Now, again, don't want to say anything negative about sex. That's a really great thing. The one thing that I find that happens, unfortunately, in marriages, though, is that a um, a couple, one of them will do these things only because they're trying to give subtle hints that they want sex. So while that is great, if this leads to sex, it shouldn't be assumed, or this shouldn't be the things that you do in order to give the hints. You should be doing this regardless, or if you're going to be physically intimate later on. These should just be a regular part of your daily routine. All right, the last one, and probably the most difficult one, is apology. And I'm going to go ahead and read that one for you now. Apology is defined as a regretful acknowledgement of an offense or a failure. Listen, Nobody wants to admit they screwed up. Nobody wants to admit that they have failed or they've offended somebody. At the same time, the quicker you do that, it shows the other person that you're taking responsibility for those things, and it creates a sense of connection in a relationship. Again, you can be, I say get in practice doing the small things. If I make a minor error, I'm real quick to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Uh, and making sure like they know, I make eye contact and let them know like I'm truly sorry. It's not just something I'm saying in passing. And when there's a big one, definitely I try to say, hey, I'm really sorry. I can see how I could have offended you, or I can see how me not doing whatever that thing was a problem for you, and I'm really sorry. I'll try not to do that again. It's just something to try to repair the relationship, and it really goes a long way in the 4A's. Now, the one thing I would say is that these new skills will take time to develop. So you want to be patient with one another as you're trying to develop the 4A's. The um, appreciation, affirmation, affection, and apologies. Uh, don't hold it over each other's head. I don't want couples or people to weaponize these things and say, remember, we looked at that video where we discussed those 4A's. Why aren't you doing it? It's about what you're doing, not about what the other person's doing. So, and give these things time to work. I know a lot of people who come to me have much deeper problems than just showing affection, appreciation, affirmation, and apology towards one another. At the same time, it's still really, really important. I use this example of if my car needs, say for instance, some transmission work done, or there's some other problem, maybe with the tire or some other mechanical thing. I don't want the car to not have oil in the engine though. While those other things need to be addressed, if I don't have engine in the oil to lubricate it, and when I turn the key, it's going to seize up halfway down the road before I even get to the mechanic to take care of that other thing. So that's why, because some people will say, well, what if I do these things and I don't see improvements in other areas? It doesn't mean that these things aren't helping. It's just that we still need to address those other areas as well. So I encourage people, go ahead and do these things. Be patient with one another and mostly focus on how you're doing it, not how the other person is or is not doing it. Anyway, I hope you find these 4A's helpful. Again, I look forward to comments and questions that may be relevant to this, but you can ask me anything, and I'd be more than happy to try to answer that in another episode. Anyway, have a great day, and thank you for watching.